Hey Camp Lahana, welcome to the Daily Do. Today, we're going to send it to Bob.
It's
Bob.
Sunday night,
Bob.
COVID night at CLJ, and that means 3 rules and a short story. Rule number one, always listen to your homeschool teacher. Rule number 2, always wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and warm water. And rule number 3, no horses in your bedroom. Short story for Sunday afternoon. You guys have been around camp, know that Sunday is reserved for Personal Hero Day. And this Sunday, no different. I have a story for you about one of my personal heroes, a scientist named Bob. Some of you guys, even though you are hours away from CLJ property, some of you guys are going to assume that Bob is a personal hero of mine because of his beautiful yoga instructor wife and his 2 fine sons. But that is not why he's a personal hero of mine. Some of you people are going to assume that Bob is a personal hero of mine because, unbelievably so, he learned to spell his name backwards almost as quickly as he learned to spell his name forwards. But that is not why he's a personal hero of mine. He's a personal hero of mine because of this timely story. Once upon a time, not too terribly long ago and not too unbelievably far from here, there was a scientist named Bob. Now, Bob was a scientist at a museum, and he was actually an entomologist. An entomologist, which is a bug scientist. He studied bugs, and particularly, Bob studied monarch butterflies. He thought butterflies were cool because it got into his brain, how does this butterfly know how to fly to Mexico every year? How does this butterfly know where Mexico is? And even crazier, how does this butterfly know when it's time to go home? So Bob studied butterflies. Well, one day, Bob's coming back from lunch, and he goes back into the museum, back into his lab, and there's a school tour. Bunch of kiddos, they're out from home, out from school, they're checking out the museum, they're checking out the lab. And there's one little guy in particular that's staring at all of Bob's collection of cocoons. Actually, they're butterflies, so you guys know they were chrysalises. Butterflies have chrysalis, moths have cocoons. So Bob had all of these live monarch butterfly chrysalises in his lab. And this one guy was staring, not just all of them, but he was staring at one chrysalis in particular. And everybody else started to move on, and this one little guy stood there and he kept staring at it. And he kept staring at it. And he kept staring at it. And Bob finally walked up to him, and Bob said, "What are you doing?" And the little guy said, "Well, there's a hole in that chrysalis. I think the butterfly's trying to get out." And Bob said, "I believe you're right. It's that time. They're coming out." So the little guy stared at it, and he stared at it, and he stared at it, and the butterfly couldn't get out. And pretty soon, the little guy lost patience. And Bob, thank goodness, looked up just in time, and that little guy was grabbing a pair of scissors and headed toward the chrysalis. And Bob looked at him and said, "Wait! Stop! Don't!" And the little guy says, "Wait, what?" And Bob said, "Wait! Stop! Don't!" And the little guy said, "I was just gonna cut the hole a little bigger to help him get out, to make it easier for him." And Bob said, thank goodness I stopped you when I did. You actually, by cutting that chrysalis, wouldn't have made it easier for him. You could have ruined his entire life. And the little guy looked at Bob and said, "Oh, just trying to make it easier." Bob said, "That's okay. Butterflies squeezing out of those little holes in the chrysalis is God's way of pumping all the fluid from that butterfly's body into his wings. And you know, if there's no wings, there's no butterfly. If you hadn't let that guy squeeze through that hole, that juice, that fluid never would have pumped from his body into his wings, and he would have spent his whole life as this chubby thing crawling around with skinny little wings. Because we made him crawl through that hole, he's gonna get fluid into his wings. He's gonna have big, beautiful wings. He is gonna learn to fly, and he's going to reach his fullest potential. That's why Bob is a personal hero of mine. Not because he loves butterflies, because he understood that the whole idea of struggle, the whole idea of hard work is what makes us better. It's what makes us stronger. Because that butterfly had struggled, he became his fullest butterfly. If we go through life and everything's too easy, we're not going to become as good as we can become. That's why we need just a little bit of struggle. Right now, you guys are living through this crazy pandemic. And one of the reasons it's so cool is that you are having to struggle to do things that you never thought you would get to do. But I promise you, when you get to the end of all this, because of all the struggle you endured, you're gonna be better. Wise people always say, great things never happen in life without a little bit of hard work and a little bit of struggle. And that's what this pandemic is for you. So be like Bob, love butterflies, look at struggle as a great opportunity, move forward, do great things. And don't forget, life is good, camp is better. See you this summer.